As you must be aware, we're running behind schedule, but I'm hoping to condense the sessions this afternoon so that we still finish on time by 5:30 this afternoon. So what I'm proposing to do is to ask first Dr. Steve Cannon for an account of his workshop, followed by Carolyn Campbell for an account of hers. And we'll keep those fairly short, and then we'll go straight into the following session with Sam Jones again. Great, so, Steve. Yep.
Thank you. Well, for those of us that were in the leadership and governance session, I think we were entertained to 6 remarkable talks, all very different in many regards, but actually with a thread running between them. Bill Rammell kicked off with a discussion of leadership and management in the UK, and he talked of a period of of radical change, probably more so than ever before, driven, I think, by the introduction of tuition fees and the reduction in public funding, and that was giving a whole new emphasis on the rights of students and stakeholders in universities, and that was beginning to impact on the way in which institutions were governed. And he talked about that in the morning. You remember he was mentioned that a student was on the university's executive, and he continued that theme in the afternoon. We were then treated, and treat was the right word, to a wonderful presentation from Dr. He from Hunan, who talked really about really bringing it down from talking about globalization to focusing on a particular program, a particular course that's offered in Hunan, and he talked about how the delivery of teaching has moved away from acquisition to participation. And he argued persuasively that globalization should be based on localization. You have to understand yourself in order before you can understand the world. In order for the world to understand you, the world needs to engage with you. And we were treated to a video of his work with a minority group, Miao, in China. To give you some size of the scale of China, this minority has some 10 million people in it, but nevertheless it is a minority, and the work that the School of Design at Hunan has been doing with those minorities was inspirational. We then moved on to a description of an initiative that is with the University of Da Nang here in Vietnam, and also with a consortium of UK universities led by Aston, which is seeking to establish a genuine international university here in Vietnam. And again, that was a description of the work that they've been doing, of the qualities and standards that they have set for the institution, of its leadership and governance arrangements, and again of its type. It was fascinating. We moved on in session 4 to Dr. Lam, who's the vice rector at Ho Chi Minh City University of Technology, and he gave us the perspective from a private university. He spoke of the importance, he spoke with inspiration and confidence actually about the importance of internationalization to the Vietnamese people, of their passion for education. And he talked about, did talk about the need to change. He suggested that it wasn't a threat not to change, but it was not changing that was the challenge, that we needed to actually change. And then he spoke about education as a global business. And interestingly, at the end, he predicted a rise in high-quality non-Western universities in Asia, and I thought that was really something that we needed to reflect closely on. We then had a presentation, very thoughtful presentation from Dr. Trung, who took Burton Clark, who was a commentator on higher education in the 80s, mid-80s, who talked of this triangle between the state, the universities, and the market. And he talked about where he believed that Vietnamese universities were in that triangle, more towards the state than towards the market, but how they were on a journey which was actually moving them towards a more market-focused approach. And again, there were parallels drawn in the question and answer session with with where China is and what China's trying to do. And we concluded with, again, I thought an inspirational presentation from Dr. Bupa from the Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education and Sports in Laos. And really it was about, and this is what really tied the whole thing together in my mind, it was about the transformational impact that universities and higher education have on a society's development, and how, if we get that right, if we actually engage in that, how important our universities are and the work that we do within our universities are to the whole development of a society. And if there was a theme that pulled it all together, I believed it to be that theme that ran through everything. And indeed, just reflecting on the day itself, I think that's been a common theme throughout the day. We all come at this from various stages, but actually that seems to be what roots us, is the importance of what we do to the development of our societies generally. So that was an attempt to, it was an hour and a half, and everybody wanted to speak for an hour and a half, but that was it summarized in the 5 minutes you've given me, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve. Carolyn Campbell from the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK. Could I ask you to sum up your session, please?
Thank you. We too had some time challenges. Many red cards flashed at speakers, but we had an audience who stayed the course and even were keen to go into asking questions when the presentations were finished. We had 6 presentations on dimensions of quality assurance: systems in development, systems in operation, and perhaps some more aspirational systems. And the presentations were by different stakeholders and actors in quality assurance: regulators, whether from a ministry or an independent quality assurance agency, and from 3 different countries, although 2 in this region, and also providers, universities, and in one case a professional awarding organization which operates on a global basis. So we had some common themes coming out. I mean, of course, the importance of quality assurance to foster international cooperation, but also how international cooperation can help foster and develop quality and standards across borders. We had some interesting discussions or some thoughts around the desirability of autonomy and decentralization, but that while the latter while this is desirable rather than centralization, you have to proceed with caution. That was one of the messages, and that there's a need to invest not only in regulation and processes for decentralization, but also to invest in people, in academic and administrative staff, in governance and management, so that institutions are able to deliver when they are autonomous. Some thoughts about program accreditation, I was going to say versus institutional accreditation, but a recognition that focusing on quality assurance at program level can have a multiplier effect. It involves more people, but also puts a focus on teaching and learning, something that is very significant in the global race for rankings, that's a Freudian slip, which encourages institutions to focus on research, whereas it's very important, particularly as our higher education systems expand in terms of the number of institutions and in terms of the number and diversity of students, it's important to focus on the quality of learning and teaching. Some interesting references to the emerging significance of international and regional principles for quality assurance. Mentions were made of the Chiba principles in the Asia-Pacific region. These are principles for quality assurance and for agencies, internal quality assurance in institutions, and also in Europe, the European standards and guidelines for quality assurance, but also too we learn that the professions as well have international standards and principles which they are respecting, particularly in this case in respect of accountancy. There were some lovely expressions. I particularly like the idea of the harmonious development of a higher education system, suggesting that it is a collaborative effort, not something that is imposed on institutions from ministries or other regulatory authorities. I also too liked the course designed to meet the needs of students, and this was in relation to cross-border education, where assumptions can be made about how students might want to learn, but also to where it was necessary to understand that structures that were unfamiliar to the awarding institution were the ones that the students really wanted and needed, so a need for adjustment on both sides. We didn't have a huge amount of time for questions, but I thought that one of the questions prompted something which had been a theme in some of the presentations. And it was a question about, do we need ranking of our institutions to foster international collaboration? Well, the answer, sorry if there's anybody here from some of the rankers, was no. But what students do need is accessible public information about quality and standards, a reassurance that the institution that they're going to study at is recognized as offering valid qualifications, and that these qualifications meet the shared minimum standards that are in the country. And with that, I would like to, I haven't got a red card yet, but I would like to conclude. And I would, again, like to thank very much the speakers in my session and also the people who asked the questions.